Shabbat Shalom. Call hello, Yahweh. Apostles of GMS, including the elders that came before them, that taught us this truth. Shabbat Shalom and salutations to all the brothers that push the word in truth and in sincerity. The hopeful and light tabernacle today. The brother Yahshua back with the WW3 Daily update. And we'll start right here. Joel 3 and 9. Proclaim ye this among the Gentiles. Prepare war, wake up the mighty men, let all the men of war draw near, let them come up. Right? In this time of war. All right? Let's get Ecclesiastes real quick. Try it again. Why is this doing this? There we go. Ecclesiastes 3 and 1. To everything there is a season and a time to every purpose under the heaven. Jump down to 8. A time to and a time of peace. So what time do you think we're in right now? Clearly in the time of war. All right, so let's watch this. All right, this is yesterday, I believe, 18 hours ago. Don't speak news. This guy's pretty good. Let's listen. All right, Don't Speak News premiered 18 hours ago. War update. White smoke seen at Russian embassy in Poland, which is a NATO country. Nuclear weapons mentioned again.
Everybody, Johnny here. Well, here's some news that you're definitely not supposed to speak about. This is Scott Ritter, former UN weapons inspector, who told the world, and whoever would listen, that in 2003, Iraq did not have weapons of mass destruction, and he knew this because, as a UN weapons inspector, he helped supervise their destruction after the first Gulf War. So he knew. He's also a former U.S. Marine, so he knows his military strategy as well. So I'm just going to play about 4 minutes of this particular interview for you so you can understand why the Western media is spinning it the way they are, saying that Russia's stalemated and losing possibly, and how that is definitely not the case. Definitely not true, and how they are not there to be an occupying force. So let's just get right into it, shall we?
You have to stop. You have to fix the vehicles. You have to put the fuel up. You have to reposition, whatever. But you can't just continue non-stop combat operations on this scale. And what's happening in Ukraine is a scale of combat the likes of which the world has not seen since the Second World War. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of well-armed men engaged in a life and death struggle on broad fronts. Broad fronts. Now, the Russians are, again, just some basic military math. You want to attack with a 3-to-1 advantage. For every one Ukrainian defender, you want 3 Russians. The Russians are attacking with roughly a 3-to-1 disadvantage. So for every one Russian attacker, there's 3 Ukrainian defenders. Now, normally you would say this is insanity. Maybe if this was a war about occupation, if this was war about gaining territory, seizing cities, it is not a war about occupation, gaining territory, or seizing cities. It's a war about denazification and demilitarization. The Russians go where the problem is. For instance, people say, well, why aren't they seizing Kiev? Why in God's name would a military with 200,000 troops committed to the totality of the battle seek to occupy a city of over 3 million people? You wouldn't. You can't. You won't even try. So when people say, well, they're failing because they haven't seized Kiev, they don't want to seize Kiev. What they want to do is threaten Kiev sufficiently for Ukrainians to send their army up into the meat grinder. And then the Russians grind them down. That's part of demilitarization. Because the Ukrainians didn't voluntarily surrender, they're going to have to be destroyed on the field of battle. This is dangerous, bloody, dirty work. And are the Russians taking casualties? You bet they are. You bet they are. This ain't cheap, what's going on. It's no army could engage in this kind of conflict without suffering heavy casualties. I know I'm not going to put a number on it. I don't think it's as high as the NATO people are saying, but I think it's high. I think it's a significant number because this is significant fighting. This is real. It's not fake. You know, everybody goes, oh, we only lost 4,000 people altogether in 20 years of war in Iraq and Afghanistan. But we weren't fighting a war in Iraq and Afghanistan. We weren't even fighting an insurgency. We were basically carrying out low-intensity conflict at a time and place of our choosing. Russia is in the field against one of the best militaries Europe has seen in a long time. And they're beating them. They're beating them. Standard military stuff. In the east, you fix the largest concentration of Ukrainian forces opposite Lugansk and Donbass. Hold them in place, grind them down. Eliminate their ability to maneuver. Meanwhile, you work the flanks. You secure Mariupol because you get denazification and you get a secure line of communication. So that's what they're doing. Once Mariupol is eliminated, you free up a significant number of Russian troops that were involved in this, and now they can go and reinforce. You get double pincer action surrounding the Ukrainian troops, who are now collapsing as we speak, retreating in disarray, and they're going to be mopped up, either killed, captured, or whatever. But their fighting days are pretty much over. Then you just keep moving west, and you keep doing this as necessary until you achieve your military objectives. But people say, oh, Ukrainians captured a town. Well, ask yourself, if you're the Russians with a finite level of military force, do you really want to commit a significant force to defend a town that's meaningless to you? Or you say, hey, the Ukrainians have their act together here. They're coming at me with significant force. Rather than grinding it out on their terms, why don't we pull back, reposition, and wait until we can engage them on our terms?
And that makes perfect sense to me. So there it is, guys. The Russians are not there to be an occupying force. They're not there to completely destroy Ukraine and then occupy what's left. And another thing that he did not mention in that clip, and he may have mentioned it in a different interview, but I have heard other experts say this. One of the things that the Russians are not doing that the U.S. and NATO always do is shock and awe with air power. Remember Gulf War I, Gulf War II, and Libya and so on. They go in with massive air power and they level everything, take out the power grid, the whole works, and then kind of halfway rebuild it and give a bunch of money to contractors. Anyway, a bunch of fraud, waste, and abuse going on there after the fact, but you get the point. Russia doesn't want to do that. They don't want to rebuild Ukraine. they don't want the whole civilian population of Ukraine to turn on them either. And they don't want their own people back in Russia to turn on them, which Scott goes into in more depth in this interview. I do recommend you watch the whole thing. It's very good. But I just wanted you to see the Russian military strategy here, because I know even alternative media, some of these prepping channels are saying, oh, Russia's stalemated, Russia's stalemated. No, they're not. Russia's taking their time, and they're taking casualties by doing it this way as well, taking more casualties. You know, but like Scott said, this is real war. This is against a real army. This isn't against, you know, a ragtag bunch of jihadis out in the desert somewhere that don't have sophisticated air defenses and so on to counter you with. Russia does, and Russia will. And when it comes to Mariupol, like he was talking about, well, they've been given till midnight to surrender. And in fact, the mayor of Mariupol has already fled the city. So the Russians have given the Azov Nazis until midnight to surrender, or else. And it's been confirmed that the mayor of the city has fled, and the Russian army troops have issued what they call a final ultimatum to the Azov regiment of the Ukrainian army: surrender by midnight, and if you refuse, it's obliteration. And they're pretty straightforward in their dealings this way. They mean what they say. And like Scott said in this interview towards the beginning, take the Russians at face value. When they make a statement, they usually mean it, as far as what they put out in the media. Not a lot of propaganda coming out of the Russian MOD, Ministry of Defense. In fact, they just put out some new documents today from Greek News on Demand. Russian MOD names curator of Pentagon-funded biolabs in Ukraine as they release more original documents. Let's just get right into it. The Russian military has begun to pull back the curtain on the scale and scope of the network of Pentagon-funded biolabs in Ukraine last week. U.S. officials and the media initially dismissed these revelations as Russian disinformation, but then they were forced to correct it, of course, when Undersecretary of State Victoria Nuland admitted that such labs do in fact exist. Now they're commenting on a trove of papers presented in a presentation as Russian Radiological, Chemical, and Biological Defense Troops Chief Igor Kirillov pointed to a document dated 6 March 2015, which he said confirmed in no uncertain terms that components of biological weapons were being created in Ukraine with direct U.S. involvement in financing. It says here, look what they were working on, guys. This project UP8 was directed at the study of pathogens of Crimean Congo hemorrhagic fever, leptospirosis, and hantaviruses, according to the RCB Defense Troops Chief. He said it is no coincidence that Ukraine-based facilities were chosen by the DTRA and contractor Black & Veatch to execute the project, the officer said, given that these pathogens both have natural foci in Ukraine and Russia. So in other words, if these things got out and started killing people, they could blame it on natural pathogens that are in Ukraine and Russia. So there you go, plausible deniability built right in, and that's why they had these labs there. Part of the reason anyway. Not to mention they can't do these experiments in the U.S. And here's a letter. And there's more down here. So I'll let you go through the rest on your own.
Smoking
and try and keep this as brief as possible. But there it is, guys. All kinds of documents coming out now. Nothing's going to remain hidden. Nothing will remain secret, including Poland's secret plan to send 10,000 troops to Ukraine, including potential no-fly zone over key cities. Now, they're going to talk about this at this emergency meeting in NATO scheduled for tomorrow. The task set for this mission would include protecting the humanitarian corridors and closing the airspace above them, which would mean World War III, guys. Plain and simple. So this secret plan, which isn't so secret anymore, of a peacekeeping mission created by the Polish Ministry of Defense likely envisions an international contingent of up to 10,000 troops being sent to Ukraine, according to an unofficial report published by the Polish news outlet. Now, the president of Poland is said to be waiting for the approval of the plan and for a green light from the White House. The contingent would likely be comprised of units from several countries, but of course Ukraine would have to give their approval to be deployed on their soil, which I'm sure they would. I'm sure they would. And I'll let you read the rest on your own. But I wanted to bring it to your attention that Russia knows about this, and in fact, they're not happy about it. And so now they're saying, let's go to conflict with Warsaw from War News 24/7. White smoke at the Russian embassy in Poland, guys, as the Russian diplomats are leaving. In fact, they were expelled today by Poland, 45 out of the 50 that are there.
This was yesterday.
So Russia's looking at it going, well, what are we supposed to do with 5 people at our consulate? So we're just going to go ahead and burn these documents, close it down. And when they did that in Ukraine, a week later, they were at war with Ukraine. So here we go. There's been a rapid deterioration in Russia-Poland relations in recent hours, with staff at the Russian embassy in Warsaw destroying classified documents and preparing to leave the country. Eyewitnesses spoke of white smoke coming out of the Russian embassy, and the Russians are confident that time is near zero. The Poles, with the support of the U.S., will launch a peacekeeping operation in Ukraine. This is what I just showed you right here. So that's what they're talking about. So Russian media notes with emphasis. Says here there are no coincidences in politics. When white smoke appeared in Warsaw the day before over of the building of the Russian embassy in Poland, it caused serious unrest. The point is that on February 17th, exactly 1 week before the start of the Russian military operation in Ukraine, a similar phenomenon was observed by residents of the capital of the Russian embassy in Kiev, Ukraine. And now we have reports of something similar happening in the Polish capital, and it's perceived as a signal and as a warning. First of all, through non-public channels, something ultimately decided fatal was brought to the attention of the diplomats. And so in general, burning documents is a common practice for members of a diplomatic mission to store documents before evacuating the country. And there you go. I'll let you read the rest on your own. And Poland has deported 45 Russian diplomats. As Poland's counterintelligence service, ABW, said today, it had located 45 Russian diplomats suspected of being spies, and added it had asked the foreign ministry to deport them. Instead, the Internal Security Service has compiled a list of 45 people working in Poland claiming to be carrying out diplomatic activity, when in fact they're carrying out espionage activity against Poland. And once again, guys, this is another thing that countries do right before you go to war with said country. So now the Russians, for their part, are saying, look, we have 50 people, and you're kicking out 45. Nothing justifies that. And they said that if one accepts that the Russian embassy employs a little more than 50 people, this decision almost stops the work of the diplomatic mission. And then they went on to say that, by the way, white smoke was seen over our embassy. And when it was seen over the embassy in Kiev, we went to war. And they said that right here, we note that there is no smoke without fire. So that's coming right from the Russian Foreign Ministry, guys. And guess what's next? Correct. That'd be war. Possibly and most likely going nuclear. Triple nuclear threat against Poland. Russia says that they have issued their last warnings and that the United States is leading humanity to disaster. It says we're going to have a big nuclear explosion and then the underworld or death. That's coming from Medvedev. He's the vice president of the Security Council of the Russian Federation. And he was the president for a short time as well, kind of a placeholder for Putin for 4 years until Putin could run again legally. But it says here that the generals of the United States do not think about the obvious consequences of the actions of a country that leads all humanity to destruction. No, they don't. Because the arrogant political ass lickers in the Pentagon now don't know their head from a hole in the ground when it comes to nuclear weapons. They think that, oh, if we're just 10 minutes earlier than the Russians, we can win a nuclear war. And they're willing to take millions of casualties in order to win that war. That's how crazy they are. So, it says here that there's been a second nuclear warning issued, this time from Russian Prime Minister Alexei Zurkulov on Russian state television. He threatened a nuclear attack on Warsaw, Poland, and NATO forces or any peace body trying to enter Ukraine. And he's referring back to this plan, to send peacekeepers into Ukraine. He said the plan to enter Ukraine is Poland, and if these are NATO forces, they must be destroyed according to the rules of our military operation. We must warn them sternly. These are not peacekeeping forces, these are NATO forces. And if you try to get them in here, we're going to have a nuclear strike in Warsaw. And there you can watch the video for yourself. It's probably in Russian, but just saying, there it is. This is followed by a third nuclear warning on Russian state television. Military expert Igor Poroshenko said this: "The West will never lift sanctions against Russia. This is war. What will be our reaction? Regular nuclear weapons on the battlefield. Re-equipping the ice scanners with special ammunition." And there's that interview. And there you go. Kaiser.
That's good enough. All right. So as you can see, this thing is about to spiral out of control. Right? With good reason. All right. So let's get a couple more, and we'll go ahead and close out. Yeah, definitely. Are we at a time of war, or are we at the time of peace? Okay. Pretty obvious. Let's see. Let's get these nukes. Let's get the extraction of the nukes. So this is Revelation 11. And 12. Revelation 11 and 12. And they heard a great voice from heaven saying unto them, who is they? Who is the they? Who is the them? This is talking about the two prophets. Okay. Where do prophets come from? Prophets come from the nation of Israel. Moses was a prophet. Noah was a prophet. They're out there telling the people, right? During the time of Noah, he was telling the sons of God, because he was the son of God, and then the sons of God turned into the children of Israel. Okay? The one you ignorantly call Jesus is a prophet. What's his nationality? He's an Israelite from the tribe of Judah. So the prophets, right? Two prophets are the northern and the southern kingdom. Okay? So they, the Israelites, the elect of Israel, the 1/3, and the 144,000 heard a great voice from heaven saying unto them, okay, salvation is of the Jews, come up hither, and they ascended up to heaven in a cloud, and their enemies beheld them. In the same hour was there a great earthquake. What earthquake? Well, we're just listening to them describing nuclear war. Okay? In the 10th part of the city, Babylon the Great, America, fell all 10 FEMA regions. Okay? And in the earthquake were slain of men 7,000. The number 7 in the Bible means completion. So everybody that didn't ascend up to heaven in a cloud were killed in the nuclear explosion. Right? Mutually assured destruction. And the remnant were affrighted and gave glory to the God of heaven. Who's the remnant? Well, the ones that went up thither. They ascended up to heaven in a cloud. All right? This is the nuclear annihilation. The second woe is past, and behold, the third woe cometh quickly. Hey, World War III is here, y'all. Period. Okay? And this is what's coming. All right? You can see it gaining speed. All right, so that's the update for today. Some interesting information. Go back and find that guy's channel, listen to the whole thing. All right? So with that, we hope that the elect were edified. And with that, Shabbat Shalom.